Hello, history lovers. Welcome to Chronicles in English, the channel where history comes alive, and every story helps you improve your English while discovering the extraordinary people who shaped our world. Today's story is about a woman who possessed almost nothing, yet inspired millions. She never commanded an army. She never ruled a country. She never became rich, yet presidents sought her advice. Kings and queens welcomed her. The world's most powerful leaders admired her, and countless people simply called her Mother. Now imagine walking through crowded streets where thousands of people are hungry. Children sleep on the roadside. The sick are left alone. The dying have no one to comfort them. Most people would walk away, but one woman walked toward them. She embraced those no one else wanted to touch. She cared for people the world had forgotten. She believed that every human life, no matter how poor, weak, or abandoned, deserved love and dignity. Her kindness changed millions of lives and inspired thousands of people to dedicate their own lives to serving others. But she was not born famous. She was not born into wealth. She began life as an ordinary little girl in a small city, with no idea that one day her name would be known around the world. How did that happen? What inspired her to leave behind comfort, family, and security? Why did she choose a life of sacrifice instead of success? And how did a woman with almost nothing become one of the most influential humanitarians in history? Today, we travel back more than a century to discover the extraordinary journey of Mother Teresa. A story of compassion, courage, sacrifice, and hope. Our story begins on August 26, 1910. In the city of Skopje, which at that time was part of the Ottoman Empire. The following day, August 27, she was baptized according to the Catholic tradition. And throughout her life, she regarded her baptism day as her true birthday. She was born Agnes Gongsha Bojaksu. The name Gongsha means flower bud in Albanian, a fitting name for a little girl whose life would one day blossom into a symbol of love and compassion around the world. Agnes was the youngest of 3 children. Her father, Nikola Bojaksu, was a successful businessman who also cared deeply about his community. He believed that those with more should help those with less. Her mother, Drenafile Bojaksu, was known for her generosity. Almost every week, she welcomed poor families, widows, and hungry neighbors into their home. Before serving dinner, she would often remind her children, never eat a single mouthful unless you are sharing it with someone else. Those simple words became one of the greatest lessons of Agnes's childhood. Her home was not rich by the standards of the wealthy, but it was rich in kindness. From a young age, Agnes watched her mother sew clothes for people in need, prepare meals for strangers, and comfort families who had nowhere else to turn. Without realizing it, the little girl was learning that true greatness is measured not by how much we own, but by how much we give. Everything seemed peaceful, but life was about to change forever. Agnes was only 8 years old when tragedy struck. Her father, Nikola Bojaksu, suddenly became seriously ill after returning from a political meeting. Not long afterward, he died unexpectedly. The exact cause of his death has never been confirmed. Some historians believe it was a natural illness, while others have suggested he may have been poisoned because of his political activities. However, no conclusive evidence has ever proved this. For young Agnes, the reason did not matter. What mattered was that her father was gone. Almost overnight, the family's life changed. Without her father's income, they faced financial hardship. But Agnes's mother refused to lose hope. She worked tirelessly to support her children, sewing clothes and doing embroidery while continuing to help those who were even poorer than her own family. Many people wondered why she kept giving when she had so little herself. Her answer was simple. If we stop helping others because life is difficult, then kindness loses its meaning. Those words left a deep impression on Agnes. She watched her mother's quiet acts of love every day. She learned that true generosity is not measured by how much you have. It is measured by how willing you are to share. As Agnes grew older, another passion began to fill her heart. She loved attending church. She enjoyed singing in the choir. She eagerly listened to stories told by missionaries who traveled to distant lands, sharing their faith while caring for the poor, the sick, and the forgotten. One place captured her imagination more than any other: India. The missionaries described crowded cities, beautiful cultures, and heartbreaking poverty. Every story stirred something deep within her. She began asking herself a question that would shape the rest of her life. Could God be calling me there? By the age of 12, Agnes felt the first signs of a calling to become a missionary. It was a quiet feeling at first, but as the years passed, it became stronger. By the time she turned 18, she had made one of the most difficult decisions of her life. She would leave her home, she would leave her family, and she would leave behind everything she had ever known. She had no idea that when she walked away, she would never see her mother or her sister again. The goodbye would be forever. Yet, with courage in her heart and faith in her future, Agnes packed her belongings and prepared for a journey that would change not only her life, but the lives of millions around the world. She was about to begin a journey to a country she had never seen: India. In September 1928, 18-year-old Agnes stood at a railway station, preparing for the longest journey of her life. She hugged her mother tightly. She embraced her brother and sister. None of them knew exactly what the future would hold. But one thing was certain: this goodbye would be different. Because once Agnes left home to become a missionary, she was not expected to return. With tears in their eyes, her family watched as the train slowly pulled away. Agnes looked out of the window one last time. The streets of Skopje disappeared into the distance. She did not know it then, but she would never see her mother or her sister again. It was a painful sacrifice. Yet, she believed that her calling was greater than her fear. Her journey first took her to Dublin, where she joined the Sisters of Loreto, a Catholic religious congregation that sent missionaries to India. Everything was new: a new country, a new language, a new way of life. Agnes had grown up speaking Albanian and Serbian, but now she needed to learn English, because it was the language used by the Sisters of Loreto and the language she would use while teaching in India. Every lesson brought her one step closer to her dream. She studied with determination, knowing that each new word would help her communicate with the people she hoped to serve. During her time in Ireland, she also chose a new religious name. She became Sister Teresa, honoring Thérèse of Lisieux, a young French nun remembered for her little way. The belief that small acts of love, done with great sincerity, could make a profound difference. It was a name that reflected the life Sister Teresa hoped to live. After only a few weeks in Ireland, another great journey began. She boarded a ship bound for India. The voyage lasted several weeks, crossing seas and passing through the Suez Canal before reaching the Indian Ocean. For the first time, she saw lands and cultures far different from the ones she had known as a child. Finally, in January 1929, the ship arrived in Calcutta, then one of the largest cities in British India. The city was alive with movement. Horse-drawn carts rolled beside motor cars. Street vendors filled the markets with color and sound. Temples, churches, and mosques stood within the same bustling city. But alongside this beauty, Sister Teresa saw something she had never witnessed before. Thousands of people lived in extreme poverty. Children wandered barefoot through crowded streets. Families struggled to find enough food. Many people had no proper shelter. The contrast was impossible to ignore. At first, she continued to another city for her religious training, but the images of Calcutta stayed in her heart. She did not yet know how. She did not yet know when, but deep inside, she felt that one day she would return, not as a visitor, but as someone who would dedicate her life to serving the poorest among them. The young woman who had left home with nothing but faith had reached the land where history would remember her forever. Yet her greatest mission had not even begun. It was only the beginning of an extraordinary journey. After arriving in India, Sister Teresa traveled to Darjeeling to begin her novitiate, the period of training for new members of the Sisters of Loreto. There, surrounded by the peaceful Himalayan foothills, she devoted herself to prayer, study, and preparing for a life of service. On May 24, 1931, she took her first religious vows and officially became Sister Teresa. Soon afterward, she returned to Calcutta, where she began teaching geography and history at St. Mary's School for Girls. The school served mostly girls from middle-class Bengali families. Her students admired her. She was kind, patient, disciplined, and deeply devoted to her work. Years later, on May 24, 1937, she took her final vows as a nun. From that day on, she became known as Mother Teresa. Although life inside the convent was peaceful, the world outside its walls told a very different story. Calcutta was a city of striking contrasts. Beautiful churches and grand colonial buildings stood only a short distance from overcrowded slums. Thousands of families struggled to survive. Many children went to bed hungry. The sick often had no access to medical care. Then came the devastating Bengal famine of 1943. A combination of wartime conditions, crop failures, and government policies led to one of the worst famines in India's history. Millions of people suffered from hunger. The streets of Calcutta filled with starving men, women, and children searching for food. Mother Teresa could not ignore their suffering. Just a few years later, in 1947, the partition of India brought another wave of tragedy. Violence erupted between communities. Thousands lost their lives. Millions were forced to leave their homes. Refugees poured into Calcutta with little more than the clothes they were wearing. Every day, Mother Teresa witnessed pain that broke her heart. Then, on September 10, 1946, during a train journey from Calcutta to Darjeeling for her annual retreat, something happened that would change her life forever. She later described it as a call within a call. She believed that God was asking her to leave the safety of the convent and live among the poorest of the poor, to care for those whom everyone else had forgotten. It was an extraordinary request. Leaving the convent would mean giving up the security she had known for nearly 20 years. There would be no salary, no certainty, no guarantee of success, only faith. After nearly 2 years of prayer and receiving permission from her superiors and the church, Mother Teresa stepped out of the convent in 1948. She exchanged her traditional religious habit for a simple white cotton sari with blue borders, the clothing that would become recognized around the world. With only a few belongings, a small amount of money, and an unshakable faith, she walked into the crowded streets of Calcutta. She had no grand plan, only one mission: to love and serve the poorest of the poor. Her greatest work was about to begin. Mother Teresa's new life began with almost nothing. She owned only a few simple clothes. She carried a small bag with her basic belongings. She had no large organization behind her, no wealthy sponsors, no grand buildings, only a heart determined to serve. Before beginning her mission, Mother Teresa traveled to Patna, where she received basic medical training from the medical mission sisters. She knew that if she was going to care for the sick, she first needed to learn how to treat wounds, recognize illnesses, and comfort those in pain. When her training was complete, she returned to Calcutta. She walked into the city's poorest neighborhoods, where thousands lived in crowded slums. Many families had no clean water. Many children had never attended school. Some people were so sick that they had been abandoned by their own relatives. Mother Teresa did not wait for people to come to her. She went to them. Her first classroom had no walls, no desks, no blackboard. She gathered poor children beneath the open sky and began teaching them the alphabet by writing letters in the dirt with a stick. It was a humble beginning, but for those children, it was the beginning of hope. As the days passed, Mother Teresa visited families one by one. She cleaned wounds, bandaged the injured, comforted the dying, fed the hungry whenever she could, and listened to those who simply needed someone to care. At first, many people were surprised by her work. Some questioned why she chose to live among the poor. Others admired her courage and began offering food, medicine, clothing, and small donations. Slowly, her mission began to grow. Young women inspired by her example asked if they could join her in serving the poor. What had started with one woman was becoming something much bigger. Mother Teresa realized that this work needed a permanent home and a community dedicated to the same mission. With the support of the Catholic Church, she began preparing to establish a new religious congregation, one devoted entirely to serving the poorest of the poor. The small seed she had planted in the streets of Calcutta was about to grow into a movement that would touch every corner of the world. The year was 1950, and history was about to be made. On October 7, 1950, Mother Teresa's dream became a reality. The Catholic Church officially approved a new religious congregation called the Missionaries of Charity. Its mission was simple, yet extraordinary: to give wholehearted and free service to the poorest of the poor. At first, there were only a handful of sisters. They lived simply. They owned very little, like Mother Teresa. They wore plain white cotton saris with blue borders, a symbol of humility, simplicity, and service. Every morning, they prayed together. Then they went into the streets of Calcutta to care for those who had been forgotten. They fed the hungry, visited lonely families, comforted the sick, and cared for people whom others were often afraid to touch. One day, Mother Teresa came across a woman lying on the roadside. She was weak, seriously ill, and close to death. People walked past without stopping. Some looked away. Others believed there was nothing that could be done. But Mother Teresa refused to leave her there. She gently carried the woman to safety, cleaned her wounds, and stayed beside her until her final moments. That experience deeply affected her. She realized that no one should die alone or without dignity. In 1952, she opened Nirmal Hide, meaning pure heart, a home for people who were dying and had nowhere else to go. There, the sisters bathed them, fed them, held our hands, and reminded them that they were loved. Some recovered and returned to their families. Others passed away peacefully, surrounded by kindness instead of loneliness. Soon after, Mother Teresa also established homes for orphaned and abandoned children. Many of these children had no parents. Others had been left behind because their families could not care for them. To Mother Teresa, every child was precious. She believed that every life had value, regardless of wealth, health, or background. As news of her work spread, more young women joined the Missionaries of Charity. Donations began arriving from people who believed in her mission. What had started with one woman walking through the slums had become a growing movement of compassion. By the early 1960s, the Missionaries of Charity had expanded to other cities across India, bringing hope to thousands of people living in poverty. The small congregation founded in Calcutta was becoming a beacon of hope. Before long, its message of love and service would reach far beyond the borders of India. The world was beginning to notice. By the mid-1960s, Mother Teresa's work was no longer known only in India. Stories of her compassion had begun to spread across the world. People were amazed that one small woman, with so few possessions, had inspired a growing community to care for society's most vulnerable. In 1965, a major milestone was reached. Missionaries of Charity received permission from the Vatican to expand beyond India. It was the first step in taking Mother Teresa's mission to the world. Soon, new houses were opened in countries across Asia, Africa, Europe, North America, and Latin America. Wherever they went, the mission remained the same: to serve the hungry, to care for the sick, to comfort the dying, and to offer love to those who felt forgotten. Mother Teresa often reminded her sisters, "We cannot do great things. We can only do small things with great love." Those simple words became the guiding principle of their work. As the mission grew, so did international recognition. Governments, humanitarian organizations, and religious leaders praised her dedication to serving the poor. Journalists from around the world traveled to Calcutta to witness her work firsthand. Newspapers and television programs introduced millions of people to the woman in the simple white sari with blue borders. Yet fame never changed her. She continued living in a small room. She owned very few personal belongings. She preferred spending time with the poor rather than attending grand ceremonies. During these years, Mother Teresa received several important honors for her humanitarian work, including the Ramon Magsays Award, often called Asia's Nobel Prize, and the Templeton Prize, which recognized her extraordinary contribution to spiritual and humanitarian service. Instead of keeping the prize money for herself, she directed it toward helping those in need and expanding the work of the Missionaries of Charity. By the late 1970s, her mission had grown beyond anything she could have imagined when she first stepped into the streets of Calcutta alone. Thousands of sisters were serving in dozens of countries. Countless lives had been touched, but the greatest recognition was still to come. In 1979, the world would honor Mother Teresa with one of its most prestigious awards, not for power, wealth, or political influence, but for a lifetime devoted to compassion. The moment would become one of the defining chapters of her remarkable life. Mother Teresa was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for her lifelong service to the poor, the sick, and the forgotten. For many people, it was more than an award. It was the world's way of recognizing that love and kindness could change lives just as surely as power or wealth. The award ceremony was held in Oslo on December 10, 1979. As leaders, diplomats, and distinguished guests gathered, Mother Teresa walked onto the stage wearing the same simple white sari with blue borders that she wore while serving in the streets of Calcutta. She did not dress like a world-famous celebrity. She dressed exactly as she did every day. Simple, humble, unchanged. During her acceptance speech, she spoke not about herself, but about the poor. She reminded the world that the greatest poverty is not only the lack of food or shelter, but also the feeling of being unwanted, unloved, and forgotten. Her words touched millions of hearts. Then she made a decision that surprised many people. Traditionally, Nobel Peace Prize winners were honored with a grand banquet. Mother Teresa politely asked that the banquet be canceled. Instead, she requested that the money be used to provide food for the poor. Her request reflected the very values she had lived by for decades. To her, every meal given to a hungry person was more valuable than an elegant celebration. The prize money itself was also directed toward expanding her charitable work and caring for those in need. News of her humility spread across the globe. People admired not only what she had accomplished, but also the way she remained faithful to her mission despite worldwide fame. Yet Mother Teresa believed the Nobel Peace Prize did not belong to her alone. She accepted it on behalf of every volunteer, every sister of the Missionaries of Charity, and every poor person whose life had inspired the mission. As she left Oslo and returned to India, she did not seek a life of comfort or recognition. She returned to the same crowded streets, the same simple room, the same daily work of serving the poor. For Mother Teresa, the Nobel Prize was never the destination. It was simply another opportunity to bring the world's attention to those who needed love the most. As the years passed, Mother Teresa continued serving with the same compassion and determination that had guided her since she first walked into the streets of Calcutta. Age slowed her down, but it never weakened her commitment. She traveled to countries around the world, opening new homes for the poor, visiting the sick, and encouraging people to show kindness to those in need. By this time, the Missionaries of Charity had grown into a global family, serving in more than 100 countries. Thousands of sisters, and later, many brothers, priests, and volunteers continued the mission she had begun with almost nothing. However, Mother Teresa's health was gradually declining. In 1983, while visiting Rome, she suffered her first heart attack. Although she recovered, her health became increasingly fragile. Over the following years, she experienced additional heart problems and other illnesses. Yet, she refused to stop serving for as long as she was able, even when she needed medical care herself. she remained focused on caring for others. By 1997, she realized that the Missionaries of Charity needed new leadership. After years of guiding the congregation, she stepped down as its head, trusting the sisters to continue the work. Then, on September 5, 1997, Mother Teresa passed away in Calcutta at the age of 87. News of her death spread around the world within hours. People of different nations, cultures, and religions mourned her passing. Tributes poured in from world leaders, religious figures, and ordinary people whose lives had been touched by her compassion. The government of India honored her with a state funeral, a rare tribute usually reserved for the nation's most distinguished citizens. Thousands lined the streets to pay their final respects. It was a farewell not only to a remarkable woman but also to a life devoted entirely to serving others. Mother Teresa's life came to an end in 1997, but her mission did not. The Missionaries of Charity continues to serve the poor, the sick, and the abandoned in countries around the world, carrying forward the work she began with nothing more than faith and compassion. Over the years, millions have admired her life of selfless service. While some historians and scholars have discussed and debated aspects of her work, her influence on humanitarian service remains undeniable. On September 4, 2016, before tens of thousands of pilgrims gathered in Vatican City and millions more watching across the globe, Pope Francis officially declared Mother Teresa a saint of the Catholic Church. From that day forward, she became known as Saint Teresa of Calcutta. But perhaps Mother Teresa's greatest legacy was never the awards she received or the recognition she earned. It was the lives she touched. Her story reminds us that true greatness is not measured by wealth, power, or fame, but by the love and kindness we show to others. No matter who we are or where we come from, each of us has the ability to make a difference. One small act of compassion at a time. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the remarkable life of Mother Teresa. I hope this story not only inspired you, but also helped you improve your English by learning through history. If you enjoyed this documentary, please like this video, subscribe to Chronicle in English, and share it with someone who loves history and learning English. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to join us again for another incredible story from history. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep making history.